All right, today in American democracy, we are talking about federalism and how that applies to our current government. So the first thing you need to know is the definition of federalism. Federalism basically is the idea that the federal government has some power, states have some power, and even local governments have some power. It's all about that division of power. The national government has power to do certain things like the military, like national defense, delivering mail, even regulating airlines. States, on the other hand, have the responsibility to regulate driving laws or tobacco and alcohol laws. And then there are some things they share. Those are called concurrent powers. And income tax would be the best example of a concurrent power. If you have a job and you get a paycheck, you pay federal and state income taxes. So that's something they both do. And basically, we have this system through the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment of the Constitution basically sets up the idea that anything not listed in the Constitution, any powers not in the Constitution, belong to the states. So, of course, states like to say that they get a bunch of power because of the 10th Amendment, and they should be able to handle certain things that are not listed in the Constitution. And, of course, the federal government likes to say that they get more power because of the elastic clause that we talked about early on with the Constitution. A unique thing about federalism, though, is that it encourages laws to be different from state to states. You would think it would make more sense to have the same laws in all 50 states. So if I'm traveling from Wisconsin to California, I know the set of rules that we all have to follow, but that's not actually the case. Federalism encourages different states to try out different things. Federalism, a federal type of government, works really well in a large country, a country with a large land area, because it divides up the responsibility. If we just had one layer of government, that's hard to manage a large land-sized country. So if you can break it up in smaller chunks like states or provinces and then give them some power, that tends to work better, and that's what we have here in the United States. We have the national government that handles the big picture issues, but then we have 50 states that control more local issues. So federalism encourages states to try things out. If it works really well in one state, it's probably going to spread to other states. If it's a disaster in one state, it's probably going to end, and that's the only state it affected. It didn't affect the entire country. So states are kind of like mini laboratories. States can try something out and see how it goes. So again, why do we allow that? It allows local action for smaller concern and national action for bigger picture issues. We don't want each state coming up with their own national defense issue or each state coming up with their own process for handling national security. That's obviously a big picture issue the federal government should handle. On the other hand, we don't necessarily want the federal government deciding every driving law in every state. That's a more local concern, so states have control over those issues. So now we're going to go through just a bunch of examples of how different states have different laws. I'm sure you are aware of some of these, but just think, what might be legal here in Wisconsin that's not legal in other places? Or what's legal in other places but not legal here? A good example here in Beloit in Wisconsin is cell phones and driving. Right now, you can talk on your phone while driving in Wisconsin, but if you cross over the state line into South Beloit, Illinois, that is now illegal. So just be aware of that. If you cross the state line while driving and talking on your phone, you could be pulled over and given a ticket, even though it's legal in Wisconsin. So here's a bunch of examples that we're just going to go through. Taxes. Taxes are a good example of how different states have different laws. Sales tax. I think Wisconsin is 5.5%. You go to Illinois, it's higher than that. Income tax. Some states like Florida and Arizona have a 0% income tax, a state income tax. That's why retired people like to move to those states because they get to keep more of their money. Gasoline tax. In Wisconsin, it's just maybe 33 cents per gallon is just tax. I know Illinois just voted to increase their gasoline tax to raise more money. So if you ever travel around the country and you notice gas is either a lot cheaper or a lot more expensive than it is here in Wisconsin, it's probably because of the tax. Voting laws are different from state to state as far as the age at which you can vote. Some places allow 16-year-olds to vote in local elections only. Most places don't do that, but you could. Registration requirements. Some states require you to register to vote 30 days prior to the election. Wisconsin is one of 4 states where that's not the case. You can register the day of the election. You walk in, you register, and you vote, but that's rare. Most states you have to register ahead of time, at least a month. And then how long do you actually have to live in a state before you can vote? That can vary from state to state as well. Gun laws. Gun laws vary across the country as far as how old you have to be to buy a certain type of gun. In Wisconsin, it's 18 to buy a rifle or a long gun, and it's 21 for a handgun. Concealed weapon laws vary. Now all 50 states have concealed carry programs. If you look at the map up at the top, it's changing as the years go on. By 2006, only Wisconsin and Illinois did not allow concealed carry, but now both states do. So concealed carry is legal all across this country, but the requirements to get a permit vary from state to state. And as well as what type of firearms you can buy, do you have to register them, all varies. Educational laws vary as far as can you drop out or when can you drop out. Most states it's 18 to drop out or 16 with parental consent. How many days you have to go during the school year varies. I know if you have a lot of friends in Illinois, it seems like they have a lot more days off than you do, and they do, because they typically go fewer school days per year than we have to here in Wisconsin. Driving laws, the age at which you can get your license, is it 14, is it 15, 16? That all varies from state to state. Speed limits, I-90, it's obviously right now 70 miles an hour, but some states you might go to 75 or 80. Seatbelt laws, I think pretty much every state now requires you to wear a seatbelt, but that has not always been the case. But alcohol content, what's the legal limit? Currently it's 0.08 in pretty much every state, but that wasn't always the case either. It was 0.1 in a lot of places, and we'll talk about why that changed in a little while. And then open intoxicants. In the past, there were some states where it allowed passengers to drink while somebody else was driving. I'm not sure if any state allows that anymore, but I know that was the case in the past. Marriage and divorce laws, the age of consent. You have to be 18, 19. Can you be younger than 18? Some states you can, some you cannot. Do you have to have parental permission? Most states it's 18 or 16 with parental consent. Who can marry who? Some states allow first cousins to get married, so that varies from state to state. Your marriage license, in Wisconsin, I believe you have to get your marriage license 30 days prior to your actual marriage, but obviously if you go to Las Vegas, Nevada, you can get your marriage license and then get married that same day. Marital property, typically most states, as soon as you get married, it's a 50-50 split of all of your stuff. And then with divorce, most states there's a waiting period. They want you to actually think about, do you really want to get a divorce? So they may have you wait 30 days or 6 months before it's official to settle that. Alcohol and drugs, and typically tobacco and alcohol is what I'm talking about here, the age of consumption. I know a number of places are now raising the smoking age to 21 because they're trying to encourage people to quit smoking. Can you drink, and at what age? Most states it's 21, but there are some states like Wisconsin that do have exceptions. If you are underage, can you drink with a parent? In Wisconsin you can if the establishment will serve you, or you could at home with your parent. When and where alcohol is sold varies from state to state. Can you buy alcohol on a Sunday? Is it after a certain time on a Sunday? Some states down south have a lot of dry counties where you can't buy alcohol at all. It's a dry county. It's not illegal to drink in the county, they just don't sell alcohol in that county. Crimes and punishment, and the main thing this one deals with is really the death penalty. The map there with the blue states shows the states that have the death penalty or do not have the death penalty, or they may have it, but they're not being used at the moment, like California. So that's a state decision if they want to use capital punishment or not. Gambling laws vary from state to state as far as, is there a lottery, is there church bingos, casinos, what type of casinos, privately owned, Native American, riverboat, so that all varies from state to state. Welfare varies, how long you can receive it, how much welfare you can get. Abortion laws vary from state to state, how old you have to be, do you have to notify your parents if you're underage, so those laws vary as well. And finally with licensing, if you want to be a teacher, a daycare provider, a cosmetologist, you typically have to get licensed in that state, and different states can have different requirements. All right, so really the nuts and bolts of federalism are different types of powers. So all those things that just the national government can do are called delegated powers. And there's three main types. First type are expressed. Those are the ones that are written right in the Constitution. So for example, it says Congress has the power to coin monies, to print actual dollar bills. That's an express power because it says that exactly in the Constitution. But then you have implied powers. Implied powers are not written in the Constitution, but they're expanded from those express powers. So to actually print that money, the national government probably needs a bank, it needs a mint, it needs a whole lot of rules and regulations that go into actually printing money. So those would all be implied powers. Again, they're not listed in the Constitution, but to carry out that express power, you need those powers. And then the last type are inherent powers. These are things where they hadn't thought of them yet. You think when they wrote the Constitution, nobody knew about air travel. And so over time, as air travel developed, they had to figure out, okay, who should do it? Should it be states or federal government regulating air travel? And it just makes sense the federal government does it. Reserve powers are all those state powers. So the things the state held onto and gets to control, like driving laws, tobacco and alcohol laws, issuing marriage licenses, those are called reserve powers. They're reserved from the states. Concurrent powers are those shared powers, like death penalty, that's a state, but a lot of marriage laws are now a concurrent power because of gay marriage. Now the federal government says states have to allow gay marriage, that makes it a concurrent power. Gambling, with now online gambling, the federal government is getting more involved, so I would say that might be a concurrent power. But again, taxes is the best example of a concurrent power, something federal and state both do. And then supremacy clause, and this is the part that causes the most conflict, is the idea that federal law overrules state law. So a state tries to do something, but the federal government says they cannot do it. Typically, the federal government is going to win because through the Constitution, federal law overrules state law. It does create a lot of controversy. You think marijuana, that's probably the biggest issue right now. Many states have now legalized marijuana recreationally and medically. Illinois being the most recent to allow recreational marijuana, probably starting in January. But the federal government still says marijuana is illegal. And so technically anybody who's running a marijuana shop or even customers of these shops could be prosecuted by the federal government because federally marijuana is illegal, and that's the supremacy clause. The other part of federalism is when they wrote the Constitution, they knew they had to put things in there to force states to work together. Way back under the Articles of Confederation, states didn't get along. They didn't want to work together very well. So they had to put things in there to force states to work together. So when I cross from Wisconsin into Illinois, it's not a big deal. I don't notice a big change because of a lot of these things. The first one would be the full faith and credit clause. This basically says every state has to honor other states' legal documents. So like my Wisconsin driver's license is valid in all 50 states. Illinois can't tell me I can't drive there because I don't have an Illinois license. My Wisconsin's driver's license is valid everywhere. Your high school diploma that you're hopefully going to get this year, you could take that and go to college in any state because they have to accept your high school diploma. Extradition is a process that forces states to get along with prisoners. If I commit a crime in one state and flee to another state and they catch me, they're going to send me back to the original state to face the charges. That's called extradition. Privileges and Immunities Clause, this basically says that states can't discriminate against you. They have to treat you fairly. There are some reasonable discriminations, such as out-of-state tuition. If you're going to go to college out-of-state next year, you're probably going to be charged more than somebody who lives within that state. That's reasonable because you have not paid taxes in that state. Interstate compacts are just agreements between states that forces them to work together. It could be to build a highway that's on the state line. It could be for police. If I'm a Beloit cop and I chase you into South Beloit, I don't run into an invisible wall. I can continue into South Beloit to chase you because we have an agreement, we have a compact that allows me to do so. And really the last part really comes down to money. He who pays the piper calls the tune. The federal government has gained more power through money. So the first one is condition of aid. This is when the federal government tells states they have to do something to get the money. So this is why now the drinking age is now 21, because that's a state power, but the federal government said if you don't make it 21, you'll lose highway funding. So every state did make it 21 because they don't want to lose that money. That's a condition of aid. You have to do it to get the money. The second one is called a mandate. A mandate is just when the federal government tells states you have to do it. The best example of this would be the Americans with Disabilities Act. This basically tells states that they have to make buildings handicap accessible. So now they have to pay, when they renovate buildings, to have ramps and elevators and handicap bathrooms. And it has nothing to do with getting money, it's going to cost money. So this is when the federal government tells states they have to do it, and it's one way the federal government can force states to do certain things. All right, that's it for federalism. Thanks.